Hey, what's up, Castlers? Eladefo7 here, and I want to go over a game that was played in the 5th round of the Team Match Championship League that was completed on May 11th by the rising star and early favorite to win Rookie of the Year, Scisca from England. Earlier in the year, he won the triple-digit tournament. His rating is no longer in the triple digits, as it is currently sitting at 1348. Again, this was the game between Let's Castle's own Scisca with white and Nova Yugoslavia's Jinjek from Serbia, who had black. Now, please forgive me if I mispronounced the name. I'll refer to him as Black or the Serbian because he has the black pieces and he represents the country Serbia in this game. Let's get into it. Scisca starts out with pawn to e4, and Black responds with pawn to b6, the Owens defense, named after the 19th century clergyman and strong amateur chess player John Owen. b6 is a cautious move which looks to develop the light squared bishop to b7 and to later undermine the center. Pawn to d4, Scisca taking full control of the center. Bishop to b7, the fianchettoed bishop hitting the e4 pawn. Bishop d3 defends the pawn. e6. Scisca develops his kingside knight. Bishop to e7 from Black. Kingside castle from Scisca. Pawn to d6. Pawn to c4. Black develops his queenside knight, and Scisca does the same. Pawn to a6. Rook to e1. Pawn to h6. Scisca presents a pawn break with pawn to e5. Black takes the pawn. White recaptures. Then get knight to c5 from Black. Bishop to c2. And then the great combo from the Serbian with queen takes d1. Scisca recaptures with rook takes d1, equal trade. But then bishop takes f3, the Serbian opting to mess up Scisca's pawn structure rather than play for a more positional game and push his pawn to g5. Right there. But anyway, after bishop takes f3, Scisca took back with his g-pawn. Pawn to c6. Bishop to e3 allows Scisca to connect his rooks, which helps them to coordinate in the future. Good move. Knight to d7 by Black threatens the unguarded pawn on e5. Pawn to f4 guards this pawn. You then get bishop to c5, knight to e4, bishop to e7, and knight d6 check from Scisca. Bishop takes d6, and rook takes d6 is an equal trade. But Scisca is now attacking the unguarded pawn on c6. Rook c8 guards the pawn, but a better way to defend it would have been knight to e7, like so. That's because, going back to rook c8, Scisca then doubles up the rooks on the d file with rook a d1, attacking Black's knight twice while it's only defended once by Black's king. Black rectifies the problem with rook c7 helping to guard the knight along with his royal highness. Bishop to e4, threatening to win the c6 pawn. Black now plays knight e7 to help guard the pawn. But then Let's Castle's rookie Englishman slams Black with the brilliant move bishop takes d6, snagging the pawn and hitting the rook simultaneously. Rook b7, Black moves his rook to safety and threatens the bishop. Pawn to c5 gives the bishop a nice outpost. However, knight to d5 gives Black a nice outpost for his knight, plus threatens the bishop on b6 and the unguarded pawn on f4. Bam, bam. The rookie takes the free pawn on c6, however, with his rook. Knight 7 takes b6, Black captures the bishop with his knight. And then c takes b6, Scisca recaptures. Scisca leads by 2 pawns after the exchange. Black finally castles kingside, and then you get bishop takes d5. E takes d5, and rook takes d5, wins Scisca a pawn after the exchange. The rookie now leads by 3 pawns. Rook fb8 from black as he attacks the pawn on b6. Scisca defends the pawn with move rook d to d6. King to f8. Pawn to b4. Pawn to g6. Pawn to a4. Pawn to h5 by black. Pawn to a5 by white. King g7. King to g2. Both players bringing their kings into the action. King to f8. Rook to c7. Scisca restricting the king from moving to a higher rank by placing his rook on the 7th rank. Excellent move. King to e8. Pawn to b5. Black takes the free pawn. Rook takes b7. Rook takes b7. Scisca up by only 2 pawns after the exchange. He lost a pawn there. Pawn to a6 kicks the rook away and allows for a forced checkmate in 10 moves with the line rook to d7, b7, rook takes d6, e takes d6, king d7, a7, king c6, a8 equals queen, king c5, b8 equals queen, h4, queen c7 check, king d4, queen a7 check, king e4, queen e3 check, king f5, queen takes f7 check, king g4, and queen takes g6, checkmate, game over. But back to the action. After a6 was played, black played rook to b8. Pawn to a7 continues the checkmate threat. Rook to c8. Pawn to b7. Rook to d8. b8 equals queen, promoted the queen, and it was in promoted the pawn, and it was in this position, move 38 in fact. Black resigned as this is now a forced checkmate in 3 moves with the line f6, queen takes d8 check, king f7, queen c7 check, king f8, a8 equals queen, promoting the pawn, and checkmate, game over. So a beautifully played game from Scisca. This game helped Let's Castle pull even against Team Nova Yugoslavia with the score tied 4-4. Let me show the scoreboard here real quick. As you can see, Let's Castle with 4, Nova Yugoslavia with 4. It's all tied up with 12 games remaining. Scisca has been a breath of fresh air for the club, and like I said before, is a strong contender to win 2023 Rookie of the Year. Well, that's going to do it for this podcast. I'm Eladef07 saying stay tuned, and I will see you soon.